flag is up, and it's good.
You're listening to The Extra Point, hosted by Phil Ruskin. Welcome.
Welcome in to another episode of The Extra Point. I am your host, as always, Phil Ruskin, joined by my good buddy, Kendall VanDerBilt. We are going through our 2026 Do Not Draft list, a little change from years past where we have done one giant show. We're doing this one position by position. If you didn't have a chance, jump on to YouTube, Patreon, or Spotify to catch the Do Not Draft list quarterback edition. We're going to hammer through some running backs right now. Kendall, I saw your list. I'm just going to tell you, there's one guy on here. It hurts my heart, but that's the purpose of the Do Not Draft list. And again, we are not saying do not draft these players because they are bad. Do not draft these players because they're going to, be a bust or they're going to have a terrible season. It's mostly our Do Not Draft list is consistent of players that we believe are too expensive or are not going to truly be able to outperform their ADP, or they're just being drafted because of, potentially name value, or people are expecting a rinse and repeat of last season. So take that with a grain of salt as you listen to some of this, and of course, make your own decisions. Our job here, of course, is to give you some names and some information and some data to help you make those decisions so that you can wind up with rings on your fingers and money in your bank accounts at the end of the season. So Kendall, kick us off with your first running back here on the 2026 Do Not Draft list, running back edition.
All right, this one hurts me too, because me and you are massively in on him in Dynasty, and I was pretty sure I was going to be in redraft, but he got steamed up everywhere else too much. So without further ado, my first running back that I'm going to have 0 shares of, I'm pretty sure, it's Omarion Hampton. Wow, that hurts to see.
The people hate boo. The people, no,
all
I'm
right.
kidding. The people hate it, but give us.
Here's why the take matters on this one. The take matters. And I think you and Mike being Hampton truthers, I hope I can at least not scare you a little bit, but maybe you'll see where I'm getting at. Because
I'm interested to hear this. I want to hear this.
This was I'm like really doing rankings hard this year. Cool for me, a little pat in the back. I finally got invited into the Fantasy Pros sort of expert program. I'm not in the ECR. It's not how it works, but this is sort of the audition where I'm going to really try hard to be, someone that makes the ECR next year. So we're going to try hard. And when I was really considering what I wanted to do at the 1-2 turn, I'm doing a lot of, I want to be RB centric. I really like RB because I like the wide receivers and other positions in 3 and 4 significantly better. So there's this big, massive group of running backs that go at like the 1-2 turn and then carry on into the mid-second, right? And so that's Genty, Cook, Chase Brown, Devon Achane, Kenneth Walker, Saquon Barkley, and Omarion Hampton. That big pack there. I'm not including Jonathan Taylor because in McCaffrey they typically go earlier. They're not at the turn, okay? And when I was looking at each of those guys individually, trying to figure out, like, I need to be able to rank this because these ranks are going to matter for people that are watching the rankings. And if I'm at the turn, I need to decide which 2 I'm going to pick because it's going to happen a lot. And what I ultimately got down to was when I look at the rest of those guys, I'll get to Saquon in a minute. He's the only one I think I could probably do Hampton over Saquon, but it's really close, and I'm leaning Saquon right now, is that the rest of those guys are in absolutely locked down workhorse roles, usually in more than one way, right? Genty is going to get absolutely everything, and he's getting an upgrade pretty much everywhere on the team. I mean, he's going to get it all. He could be the Devon Achane of last year. Similar usage, honestly. Cook, he's got Josh Allen for a quarterback. Vegas projects him to be the number 1 offense, and from what we've seen from camp, he's probably going to get a few more targets if we're to believe anything from camp. So, and he's an explosive type of player. Absolute workhorse. Chase Brown, workhorse plus all the catches, right? Achane, even if you're off on him, and I think we're going to talk about him later in the video, right? I happen to be pretty high on Achane still. that's just my like aberration thing, right? So maybe you could do him over. You can't argue with the fact that Achane will be a ridiculous workhorse though, and his role is exactly what it is. And then I'm high on Kenneth Walker being a dominant. There's just no competition there at all, right? So, and then I get to Hampton, and I'm like, well, I like Keaton Mitchell. I like him a lot. I mean, what's his face? McDaniels was putting up posters of his face in the locker room, and I don't think he's going to steal a lot of touches, but they will be meaningful touches in areas where you wish Hampton was getting them. And it sounds like they're a team that very much plans on making the playoffs and making a deep run, maybe Super Bowl ambitions. And you see smart teams like the Seahawks who were using a talent to the caliber of Kenneth Walker in a committee because they have those aspirations. And that tells me that Vidal is going to see a lot of touches in the fourth quarter if they're in a pretty winning situation. I think he's going to take some early down guys. We just need to get 4 yards here. I think he's going to mix in just enough. Like Hampton's still the guy, but we have a passing down explosive gadget back and a serviceable plotter that earned at least a little something. That's just enough. There's a reason that some sharp people were saying, hey, Genty, I don't know last year. There's always a couple where like the role is and the offense aren't going to be what you think they are. I think the offense is what we think they are, but the role isn't quite there with Hampton. Coming off of an injury, yeah, he looks pretty good in my opinion, but we're talking about a borderline first round pick, and it's not because I don't like him. I would love him in the second half of the second round, but basically just after that big group. I can't justify taking Omari and Hampton over Genty, over Cook. Him versus Chase Brown. He is a better football player than Chase Brown, right? 100%. And I love the Bengals. I got some tokens on them to go pretty far this year. But I just don't think you can compare the Hampton's role with Chase Brown's role, who was a top 4 running back down the stretch last year when he finally got it together. Hampton's never been on pace for that, ever. So, and that's just a couple names. Let's say I say, okay, I can get him over Achane because I'll just agree with you. And maybe I can find one of those other guys to get him over, maybe over Saquon. I still have 3 other guys that I just can't get him over, and I will be able to draft any of those 3 guys there if I want to, and I just kind of do. So if I have to pick 2, maybe he's 3 in that list, but he's not going to be in the top 2. So for that reason, I am not drafting Omari and Hampton, sadly.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, it's the do not draft list based off of exactly what you just said, right? You can't get him higher than this player, or there's just better opportunity elsewhere, or, the value in a PPR league of a catch, right, is a target, I should say, is 1.4 fantasy points versus just a handoff, right? So there's metrics here that make sense. I just don't like it because I love Hampton and I really wanted to do. But also, this is mostly a dynasty show, right? And we are so in on dynasty. On Hampton in Dynasty, where we have him. I think I have him as the consensus RB3 in my rankings. I think you have him as the 4. I think you still had Genty, and we were talking about that last time. So we're still in the top 4 for him. So listen, again, we are not saying Omari and Hampton is a bust and he's a bad player. It's just, if you're right at the 1-2 turn, if you want to start RB, you got to get it right. We talked about this on the quarterback edition of this show. Like you can't win your draft, but you can lose it. So, are you going to figure that piece out? I'm going to talk about a player in that same pocket of running backs. And this one's hard for me, not because I love the player. This one's hard for me because I really don't see I'm just not seeing the path. And it's De'Von Achane. He's the RB5 overall. His ADP is 11, which means he is going in the first round. At worst, it's at the 1-2 turn. Jeff Hafley comes out this week and says there's going to be games where he gets 40 touches. And as a fantasy manager, you're excited. But as a dynasty manager who's had Achane on his team the last couple of years, you have to ask that question, can his body handle it? Because when he's drafted to the Dolphins, we said, listen, this is the perfect situation for Achane because it's a Mike McDaniel offense. We didn't say it was a great offensive line. We didn't say it was a great organization. We said it was because of a specific head coach who was also the offensive mind there, who is no longer there. I get it. The Dolphins are going to be one of the worst rosters top to bottom in football. You and I were talking backstage before it. We think that it's easily going to be the Dolphins, Jets, and Cardinals in some order for the 101, 2, and 3 in the real NFL draft next year. You do not have to be on a great fantasy team to be fantasy relevant, but this is my reasoning for having Devon Achane on my do not draft list. It's Achane and no one else. At least last year you had Tyreek Hill for 3.5 games. You had Jalen Waddle. Where do you have this year? We don't know when Chris Bell is going to be healthy. Malik Washington is not the guy. We don't even know if Malik Willis is any good. So at the end of the day, if you are a defensive coordinator, I don't know if the Dolphins play the Texans. I just want to use that as an example because the Texans are one of the best defenses in the league. What are you saying? Take away Devon Achane because no one else on this team can beat us. So he's going to see stacked boxes because there's no vertical threats. What weapons do the Dolphins have that other teams are truly game planning for? And we never want to predict an injury. That's certainly not what I'm saying. But again, from a dynasty perspective, when Achane was coming out, we literally said, this is not a 3-down back. This is not a player who is built for the bruising power running back that some of these other guys are. So now you're going to give that guy 40 to 50 potentially touches a game? It's hard for me to see how his body holds up with no supporting cast. The other thing that I want to talk about really quickly is this. The Dolphins scored 38 total touchdowns last year. 38. That was the 11th worst in the league. So where are all these touchdowns coming from? From an unproven quarterback with no true offensive weapons, no tight end. I mean, this is, you can't even tell me that they've got at least the Raiders had a Brock Bowers last season when Genty was a rookie. At least they had someone that was established. You're talking about Greg Dulcich, Malik Washington, and fill in the blank here. I just don't see a path forward for Achane where he's returning RB5 value for you, even on 40 touchdowns a game. If you tell me that James Cook's going to get 40 touchdowns a game, that's 40 touchdowns a game. Excuse me, 40 touches a game. If James Cook gets 40 touches a game, he leads the league in touchdowns, and he's probably the overall RB1. That's Christian McCaffrey level workload. But this is not the team. This is not the offense, and this is certainly not the offensive scheme. And the player, I'm having a really hard time getting there when I just don't see. I mean, even if Steph Diggs had signed there before he went to Washington, at least you'd have somebody. There's just nobody. There's just nobody when you are a defensive coordinator getting ready to play the Dolphins. And it's not to be disrespectful. They're still professional athletes. This is still a professional organization, right? They're guys that can play the game. But you can't tell me that you're sitting in a defensive room going, guys, we got to plan for this X receiver, and this guy can move into the slot, and all these crazy formations that they're going to line up with motion. The ball's going to Achane. Everybody knows it. Make somebody else beat you. I coached for many years. If you have one player on a team that is their guy and you can eliminate that player and you lose that game, sure, it sucks you lose, but at least you knew you did exactly what you were supposed to do to take away the most obvious threat for the guy that can hurt you and win that game. And then you're just basically rolling the dice saying, all right, Malik Willis, all right, Malik Washington, beat us. I don't think you can do it. And I don't think they will. So I'm out on Devon Achane at the 1-2 turn because like you with Hampton, if I'm at the 1-2 turn and I'm starting RB, I'm starting with James Cook and Ashton Genty. I'm starting with, Cook and Barkley, Chase Brown. I'm just going to pick some other names, and I'm not going to worry about, Achane. I'm sorry. It's just not going to happen for me this season. And we'll, like you and I were talking backstage, we'll hope the Dolphins either trade down from that early first or they use it to put somebody in there that's going to help him. But it's going to be a long sled. It's going to be a lot of tough running for old Devon Achane this season in Miami.
Yeah, and just a quick add-on, and we won't do this for most of these takes, but as someone who I'm probably one of the highest on Achane in the industry, which is scary. It really is scary because I agree with the counterpoint. The way I'm drafting him, right, is not that I'm actually taking him in that group that I mentioned earlier, right? I'm in a mostly competitive leagues, pretty high-end industry leagues, and because he's not favored in those highly competitive leagues, like I think in more home leagues, who people just kind of remember last season without the nuance of what might change going into the season, more like names. I think he's going to go higher the more casual the league is, basically. So for like home and office leagues, right? I'm just not going to have him because he's going to get taken before, and I'm going to go with other people in that range. But in industry leagues, where I think he's going to fall to the second half of the second round, if I happen to have an earlier pick, I'm just going to draft him at that slightly reduced cost where he's not competing with that group of running backs earlier. I can still get my, RB start in some cases. I'm super bullish on Genty that I might go Genty earlier. Say, maybe Genty over Puka or something, which sounds crazy, but I'm actually kind of on that train a little bit. And then I can get him on the way back because I don't love where the receivers start to become at the tail end of that second. I think it's a flat tier going for a while. So the point is, I'm in on him, and I'm still saying my shares of him are going to still be pretty measured because I can own him pretty much everywhere if I want to, given his cost, and I'm still not going to do that as a guy in on him. So when a guy in on him is saying I'm still not going to own him a lot, that's very buyer beware, and I think it's that's real signal.
Agreed. All right, give us another one.
Let's talk about. I think this one is more unanimously favored here. I'm not drafting Josh Jacobs. Won't go long on him because I think a lot of people are out on Josh Jacobs, but there's enough people that are in on Josh Jacobs that it's at least worth mentioning. So the off the field issue, it's a thing. From what I'm hearing in various circles, a lot of people, myself included, see these off the field things come up, and they're trending that they just don't really get settled that season. They're able to kick the can down the road long enough that it doesn't happen. So I still think that's the most favorable outcome. But what has to get taken into effect, and this is just me being in organizational leadership for long times, is the front office has to start thinking about making decisions way ahead of time, full year in advance. And when stuff like that happens with his contract situation, I think they're ready to move on sooner than later. And the coaching staff that plans on being there for a while, I don't believe the LaFleur hot seat stuff. I think he really needs to see what he's got in Lloyd, who was a great prospect. He's looking explosive in camp, which helps. So there's every incentive for that team to have more of a committee back so they really give Lloyd some run in case of injury, in case of unexpected off the field stuff kind of comes to fruition. And what's the future, right? So there's just a lot of reason that he's not the workhorse that he has been. And in the third round, I think shout out to I'll think of it by the end of the show, but he did a war chart, wins over replacement. And what it looked like is that third round running backs are suicide. We're getting really efficient in the fantasy football market. Best ball and the best ball bros, right? They've really helped us get really darn good at this game in the first couple of rounds. There's a reason that third and fourth round win rates and advance rates at running back are poor. And that's because the players are good, but we're really good at guessing and figuring out the situation and who's more stable. And things just fall off the rails when you get into the third round. And that's really where I see the running back has way too many question marks when the wide receivers are just much, much smoother and solider, in my opinion. So for several reasons, I won't be drafting Josh Jacobs in the third this year.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it pre-show, and I made the comment that kind of in that grouping of players at the 1-2 turn, I'll put Derrick Henry as the lowest on this list. But once Kenneth Walker, Chase Brown, HN, Henry are off the board, I'm completely shifting and completely pivoting. There's just too many good wide receivers. I know you called it a flat tier, and it might be, but if I could get two guys out of that flat tier versus a flyer on a Josh Jacobs, like that's what I'd rather do. Is go boom, boom, round 1 and 2 to get my two really what I feel is safe and secure running backs, and then go, start hammering away at wide receiver and load up. Because me, I'm always going to try to take a late round quarterback. I'm never going to really pay up for those early Josh Allens, Lamar Jacksons. I know we talked about Lamar Jackson on the last show being on the do not draft, but there's just players that it almost feels like the entry point to the RB dead zone is getting earlier. Whereas you can go get David Montgomery in the 4th or 5th round, and I would much rather have David Montgomery than Josh Jacobs.
Mm-hmm. So I'll even throw to you here, because if you're going to make a mistake, I would rather draft the mistake you're about to mention than Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting prospect. I'm going to bring some stuff up here with Jeremiah Love that's not going to make people happy, but it is. Me, Kendall, I like my data. I like my numbers. I like my facts to support a lot of my reasons. So he's the RB13. He's 25th overall right now in ADP. He's going at the 2-3 turn. Look, we've seen Tyler Algier put up 1,000 yards. We've seen Tyler Algier be a viable flex play in an offense when Bijan Robinson was there.
Rookie year.
So now you're telling me that Tyler Algier is going to play with Jeremiah Love. Okay, that scares me. The Cardinals aren't trying to win games. I love that their GM came out this week and was like, we believe we have a great roster and this is a play. We expect to make the playoffs this year. You don't even believe the bullshit that just came out your mouth. That's actually the stuff that gets you fired, not the stuff that's like, so like, come on, dude. I know you're trying to rally the troops, but like, you know that you're not trying to win this season. Is Brissett the quarterback all year? I have no idea. That impacts the running game. Because Brissett threw it, 6,000 times last year. What if it's Carson Beck? That's a different impact. McBride is the focal point of this offense. This is a bottom 3 team. We expect them to be picking their quarterback of the future very early next year. They scored 38 total touchdowns last season. 38. It's the same as the Dolphins. It's the same argument. Where are the touchdowns coming from? Where are these touchdowns going? Because the one thing that we know about Tyler Algier, as the Bijan, Kendall, you and I own tons of shares of Bijan across Dynasty, we saw Tyler Algier vulture touchdowns from Bijan. It's incredibly frustrating, but we saw it happen. It can absolutely happen here in Arizona. Rookies take time to develop, and I want to give you some names and I want to give you some stats. Ashton Jeanty last year in his rookie season was being drafted roughly around the same position that Jeremiah Love is being drafted. He's the only guy in town. No one knew that Bowers was going to get injured. He's going to get everything. And he had a good rookie season. He had 266 attempts for 975 and 5. He had 73 targets for 55 catches, 346 yards and 5. So he scored 10 total touchdowns and roughly 1,200, just a shade under 1,300 all-purpose yards. That's not terrible, but that's not first round. Not when James Cook is scoring 15, 16 touchdowns and putting up 1,600 yards by himself. Not when these names who went after Jeanty last year, and some of them are still going after Love this season, not when Derrick Henry put up 1,500 yards and 16 touchdowns last year and you can get him 2 rounds, a full round later. Travion Henderson and Javonte Williams, you can get 2 full rounds later than Jeremiah Love. Travion, who was splitting work in a 40% timeshare with Ramondre, who was definitely the 60%, and when Travion missed games, still put up 1,100 yards and 11 touchdowns. So he almost completed exactly the same yardage that Jeanty did in his rookie season, and he put up an extra touchdown. Javonte put up 1,251 total yards with 1,300 total touchdowns. I see this Jeremiah Love season going very similarly, probably a shade worse than what Jeanty did in his rookie season because of Algier and because I don't think this Cardinals team is very good. So if you're telling me that I have to pay up in the second or the 302 or 3 at the very beginning of the third round for a player who's more than likely going to get outproduced by a guy, because I do expect Travion to be the 60 and Ramondre to be the 40. And I know there's some noise in camp, but in the Cowboys camp, but like, it's Javonte. Let's be honest. Let's call a spade a spade. It's Javonte's backfield. There is not a ton of competition there. This is why I just talked about it. I'd rather start RB and move on. But if I don't, if somebody makes a mistake and the value is just too good for me to pass on a wide receiver and I'm forced to take a running back, I would rather just go wide receiver, and take my RB2 with a Javonte Williams in the 5th round because he's probably going to outproduce Jeremiah Love, who has no competition on a better offense. Cowboys are a much better offense than the Cardinals are. So again, I come back to this number. If they scored 38 total touchdowns last year, Trey McBride's going to get a handful of that, at least double digits, we anticipate. Now you're down to 28 total touchdowns. Michael Wilson's going to get some. Marv's going to contribute a couple here and there. I know people are split on, but it's like you're just not going to be able to have this high volume, super efficient Jeremiah Love outlier touchdown season when you don't have a lot of touchdowns to go around. You have Trey McBride, who is absolutely the number 1 read in this offense, especially in the red zone. And you've got a Tyler Algier who's going to vulture a couple of those away. So for those reasons, I'm out. I love Jeremiah Love in Dynasty. I think he'll be a great player in this league. I want him to do well. I think he will do well. But for this rookie season, I'm going to let somebody else take the pick. And if I'm wrong, I'm happy to be wrong. But I don't think that I'm going to be wrong on this one because there's a lot of players I'd rather draft over him who I think at a bare minimum could put up equal numbers at a couple rounds cheaper. And I'd rather go get a couple extra wide receivers or take my shot on one of the elite tight ends if I'm going to go elite tight end in round 2 or round 3 over Jeremiah Love.
Yep, that's Colston Loveland territory there,
It's
baby.
Colston Loveland and Tyler. That's exactly what it is, in Tyler Warren territory. So, Kendall, let's keep moving through these running backs. I just talked about him as somebody who I would take, and now you're not going to take him. So that's totally fine. That's the purpose of this show. We don't have to agree on everything, but give us your next running back.
So this one's tough, right? Because I actually still kind of want to draft him because I do think he has a ton of upside. When you compare him, this is Travion Henderson, by the way. Currently, he's the RB24 going off the board, 56 overall at the 508. And there's a lot of running backs going off the board in the 5th round that draft real quick in the 6th. I own him a lot in Dynasty, and I've been pretty bullish on him overall. The reason I'm saying maybe don't draft him, like I do like him as an RB3 because I think if you make the playoffs, I think down the stretch he could really run away with it. Here's my challenge with him. It's a soft take. Like he makes Jeremiah Love look like a much worse pick. I think that's a great comparison, right? My challenge is in the 5th round, I still think I have access to much more stable, predictable floors with some ceiling outcomes. Travion, as a guy who drafted a lot of him last year, I don't know that you know when to start him, right? Just because he has a really good game last week does not mean he will the next week. He could be schemed out, could be more of a Ramondre game. The amount of fantasy points he scores compared to his snap share just isn't super correlated all the time. It just doesn't really happen that way. And a lot of his massive games where a huge chunk of those touchdowns and yards came from was when Ramondre was injured. Right. I do think this team is going to have a balanced approach. I think they're going to be frustrating a la Seattle last year, where I'm a massive Kenneth Walker fan, and y'all saw the talent. We saw the talent, Travion Henderson, the preseason when he ran it back just immediately, right?
Yeah.
I think the team knows that, and I agree with you. He will get the 60-40. But I think in the same range, instead of 60-40, you can get 70-30 with Monty, who I think is like a pencil in 10 touchdowns because that defense is so good and he's just going to be there. You mentioned the boring but darn right reliable Javonte and what I think is going to be a stupid good offense where he's going to trip and fall in the end zone and is still okay in other parts of the game. So there's just other players where I think they're going to get you into the playoffs with a better advance rate because you're going to win more games weeks 1 through 8. Where is there a chance that Travion really catches fire down the road? Yeah. But I think that's more of a best ball play, and I think there's more secure ways to solidify RB3, right? And I don't want to draft a ton of later running backs because the rookies, it's not a great rookie class in my opinion. I don't love a lot of the landing spots. And there's so many darn committees that I think no one's startable. Like even after an injury, somebody might not be like quote unquote like startable and excited, right? Yeah. Which is crazy to say. But because of that, I think there's other, like we've been talking about this a lot. There's other names that I think have just better situations, and they're going to be more predictable. So for those reasons, take a shot or two on Travion. I'm not going to have 0% of him, so I guess he's technically on the probably don't draft list. But I do think you should look at our league winner list to find guys that go a few picks later and are better picks.
Yeah, and we will be getting to the League Winners show coming up here in the next week or two. That is also one of our favorite shows to do each and every season, so stay tuned for that. I'm going to talk about Bucky Irving, and I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm out on Bucky Irving for the same reasons that everyone else is out. And everyone else is, for those that don't know, if you're new to the show, if you just don't tune in a ton, maybe you're, just getting ready for your redraft league. Everyone's out on Bucky because he missed most of the season last year with injuries. He came back, then he got injured again. He was extremely inefficient. It was a lost year for Bucky. In dynasty circles, he's a hold because you can't sell him because his value is too low for what relative to what you paid for him. So you're not going to sell him at a loss, and you can't trade for him because it's just too damn risky. So it's like you just have to sit there and hope for the best. I'm going to give you a different take on why I'm out on Bucky. I'm going to assume full health, which is what he says he is. I'm going to assume whatever off-field mental health conditions he was dealing with have been dealt with. So let's give Bucky the wipe clean slate. Can we agree on that? Here's why I'm still out. He's the RB20, which means he is being drafted to return RB2 value as the overall 44th player off the board in the 3rd round, 4th round. That is where Bucky is going, depending on your league right now. We know they signed Kenneth Gainwell. I'm not going to sit here and say that Kenneth Gainwell is going to take away from Bucky because Kenneth Gainwell is going to rinse and repeat what he did in Pittsburgh, where he was the leading receiver on the team. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is Baker's the check down king, Kendall. We've talked about with Baker Mayfield in his career, leading the NFL most of the years in his career as the number one quarterback to check it down. Who does that benefit? Kenneth Gainwell. Bucky, similar to Achane, has never been a 3-down back. When Rachaad White was there, he still had times when he lost passing work. So I think you're going to see more of a timeshare closer to 50-50. That's what I believe you're going to see. Gainwell's probably going to get the goal line. That's not good for Bucky. Emeka Egbuka, I know he limped off the field today and he's day-to-day. That's the breaking news. But I don't think it's a big injury. It sounds like it's just a toe thing. Emeka Egbuka, spoiler alert, is not on the league winners show sheet, but he's in the player pool. He's moving back to the Y and Z roles, and that's where he thrives. I think he's going to have a huge season this year. Baker and his timing should be much better. The first half of last season, Egbuka set the league on fire, and then he got a case of the dropsies. The Bucks got injured. The Bucks lost the division. Let's be very clear about that. The Carolina Panthers did not win this division. The Bucks lost it. Mm-hmm. And so I think if you look at the role that Egbuka is going to have as the number one target in this offense, I don't like Chris Godwin. You don't like Chris Godwin, but he's still a good player, and he's still going to catch passes. He's going to move the chains. Kate Otten can catch passes.
McMillan
Jalen McMillan is back, right? Ted Hurst is looking good. So there's just a lot of options. And all of that to say is, yeah, sure, Mike Evans is gone, but at the end of the day, a lot of this work is going to be divided. And if there's just not as much of a target percentage to go to the running back, and Gainwell cuts into some of Bucky's workload, these are the names you're passing on to draft Bucky as your RB2. Zay Flowers, Ladd McConkey, potentially Emeka Egbuka, T. Higgins, Devonta Smith, Javonte Williams, who has no competition. And I know that the jury's out on Kinshawn Judkins. It's kind of a split. You're either in or you're out. But I'm leaning more on the inside, even though I think the Browns are going to be bad. But like the quarterback plays off. I'd rather have Judkins as my RB2 than Bucky, because at least I know Dylan Sampson is not even close to the caliber of a player that Kenneth Gainwell is. So if I'm just looking for touchdown upside at my RB2 because I went wide receiver heavy or I drafted one of the big time tight ends early, give me David Montgomery, give me Kinshawn Judkins, someone that I know is going to have the goal line role and on a PPG basis probably outscores Bucky. So in summary, I think there's a lot of ways. I think there's a lot more ways that this goes wrong for Bucky, and a lot of things I think have to break his way for it to go right. And I'm not willing to invest a super high draft pick on someone that at best is a 50-50 if this goes right or if it goes poorly. That's just too much. That's too high of a percentage for me. So I'm out.
Yeah. He's expensive DeAndre Swift to me.
It's a great comp. It's a great comp. So Kendall, why don't you give us another? You have two more. Give us one more, and then I am going to wrap up my segment before we kick it back to you to end the show.
All right, let's do it. Unpopular one, but I think a lot of people are coming around to this take a little bit. But in case you haven't, I want to be in on this player because I'm massively in on the Saints. You know me, going to mention the Tyler Shuck. I'm in on literally everything this team has going on, but I am not in and not drafting Travis Achane, formerly Travis Etienne, anymore. Meaning we're really, really in on the Flamesman early. ECR, he's RB19, coming off the board 44th. It's the 408 on average, so fourth round there. Again, third, fourth round. We like our wide receivers there. We like other positions. We're taking running back a little early. Would have been a great pick. Challenge is Kamara is still there. And I think Kamara is still quite good. I don't think Kamara's ever been bad. And he's the type of player that is going to age pretty well. There's never been the team got bad, but I think he was okay. So it's an upside situation that gets lost, right? I think that he's the better third down back. He is a better natural pass catcher, and he's just done that role for so long at a high level in the NFL that I think even Travis would tell you that, yeah, he's better on that role. And he's come off the record saying it's going to be really fun sharing a backfield with Kamara. Like we're gonna do some awesome stuff, right? but it's like a different version of the Ramondre Henderson thing. He's obviously a lot better than Ramondre in my opinion, but we like. I'm just gonna say ETN because I can't do it anymore.
Yeah, no, it's too confusing.
I tried, guys. I tried. I need that upside if I'm going to take him in the top 5 rounds. We've mentioned this with a couple other players that there is pretty good upside on pretty good offense with guys going around later. And I think that just the passing on the third downs, the ability for Kamara to who is a pretty good goal line specialist. Remember Christmas 6 touchdowns, like craziness, right?
Can't forget it.
Yeah, that won a lot of people some millions of dollars. So it's just that Kamara staying there, and I don't think he's going to be bad. I actually think he could outperform his ADP, but I don't want to pick a player that's kind of like a safe player in a good offense that's losing a lot of his upside to a running mate when I don't think you have to this year. And I guess a secondary take that less people are talking about is he was on a really good team last year, really good, great offense. His metrics were not as good as they should have been. You could even see it on the field. There were situations where I thought he should do a lot more with the workload that he had, but his forced missed tackles weren't fantastic. His yards after first contact weren't fantastic for a player type that I would have thought coming out of college is an area he excelled in. So he took a little bit of a step back last year in his on-field performance in a wonderful situation, and that worries me a little bit when he's walking into a backfield with Kamara. So maybe he steps up again this year, but again, ceiling's capped. So I'm going to go with other players in that range, and especially probably drafting wide receiver in that 4th round, and then looking at guys we like better in the 5th and early 6th.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just ended it perfectly right there, talking about the pivot, right? And I think you're going to look at wide receiver. The 4th, 5th, and 6th rounds is just loaded with wide receivers. And I'll be honest, after the 6th is where I see a very clear tier break. That's where I'm positionally pivoting myself away from wide receiver. But I think there's a ton of value. And if you do have some guys that, I won't say reach, but some guys that decide they need a Travis Etienne or some of these players we're talking about, these mid-range, early dead zone running backs, I think you might end up being the beneficiary of some falling value. So I say that to say this because I am going to talk about some of this falling value right now. I am out this season, as I almost always am, on the ambiguous backfields, but I'm going to say this. I'm even more out this year in favor of some better players in better situations. Of course, I'm talking about Denver, Washington, and Minnesota. Denver's a disaster. I don't want anything to do with it. I don't even like J.K. Dobbins if he was in a 2-back, committee. Now he's in a 3-back timeshare. Sean Payton has absolutely no loyalty to any one running back. They just gave up a first and then I think a second, maybe 2 seconds for Jalen Waddle. What do you think they're going to do? Shelve him? I know Waddle has his injury history, but if Denver is going to take this step forward that they thought they were going to take last year and make the Super Bowl, I think they expect to be a playoff team. I think they expect to be a team that has a deep playoff run. This is going to be trying to feature Jalen Waddle and Cortland Sutton as much as they can, and an absolute timeshare of a committee to just get the chains moving, to get, pass catching specialists, to get the goal line guy in. You don't want anything to do with that. So I'm out on that. I'm out on Washington. I think Rachaad White probably is the starter week 1 over Bill, but it's like 55-40. You know what? It's probably not even. It's probably 51-49.
I mean, the offensive line injury probably helps him get some more targets, but still there's no ceiling anymore.
But it's what we just talked about, on the quarterback episode of this, where we were out on Jaden Daniels because his draft cost was just too high, and there's better quarterbacks who probably outproduce him this season later. But that Laramie Tunsil injury is a big loss. That's a big deal to this offensive line. So I don't know that there's a role that Rachaad White or Bill, like you said earlier, like even if there was an injury, I'm still not excited to start these guys. I don't know if there's enough volume there for any one of them. Of course, I'm out on Minnesota with Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason. It is a carbon copy of the same discussion that I just said about Washington. But here's where I am at because I'm fading all of these. Some of these ADPs are going to change and they'll go a little bit higher, I think. But Kyren Williams almost made this show, Kendall, as a do not draft because he's going at the back of the 3rd. And I think that's a huge mistake when you've got so many good wide receivers just sitting there that are probably on a PPG basis going to outscore Kyren. I brought Kyren up to say this. Give me, instead of J.K. Dobbins, we had a draft a week or 2 ago. J.K. Dobbins went at the 808. Blake Corum went at the 810. I'll take Blake Corum. He's in a much more favorable situation. There's only 2 guys. It's a much better offense. If Kyron isn't the goal line guy, it's Blake Corum. If Kyron misses time, it's Blake Corum. Like, there's just no downside to Blake Corum. Everything, again, presumes health. So I'd rather have, a Tyler Algier. I'd rather have an Isaiah Pacheco. Yeah, I mean, like, these are the
we
guys.
We should have a Tyler Algier test. If you can't pass the Tyler Algier test, you shouldn't be drafting that player.
That's a great comment. I'm looking at a player like Chris Rodriguez Jr. in the 12th round. You know what I mean? At this point, what you're saying is I just need another running back that's at best going to be a flex. Because if you're counting on any of these ambiguous backfields as starters, your dynasty, your redraft teams, I don't think is making the playoffs unless you have extreme ceiling somewhere else. So if you're saying I just need a flex player, I just need a body so that when I do have some injuries, when the bipocalypse starts to happen, I could throw someone in there. Give me Chris Rodriguez for free in the 12th. You know what I mean? Like, those are the kinds of names that I'd rather have over some of these guys, because I'd rather, at least I know if that guy's not the guy, I see the path to him being the guy. Kendall, you don't know. I have no clue who it's going to be in Denver. None. It'll be a different guy
in the pre-draft process, so maybe.
Yeah, well, we liked a lot of players pre-draft that didn't.
Is Beatty still on that team? There's like some random fourth.
Let's talk about a player you liked in the pre-draft process in Denver who's still there, RJ Harvey.
No.
We liked Caleb Johnson. Let's move on. Kendall, why don't you close out this show in this segment with one final guy here? I know you wanted to just talk about him quickly. It's not a sexy name, but just kind of wrap up here with one running back.
Yeah, I guess it's a toe off. It's still an ambiguous backfield. It's the Pittsburgh backfield with Dowdle and Warren. I just wanted to cover it real quick because I think a lot of people are picking one of these guys to like, and I'm pretty opinionated on. I'm not like in on Warren because I'm not really in on the team, but if I had to be, I'm way more in on Warren than Dowdle, and Dowdle got a little bit of hype over there, and I think it's ridiculously unwarranted. So the take on why I don't want to be in on Dowdle is I still think it's kind of a defensive plotting team, and if they do anything on offense, it's probably because Pittman's making something happen with A-Rod, or it's because Tyler Warren is the trusted back. A-Rod talks about him really, really well, and he's much better in pass protection. Rico Dowdle is much worse in pass protection than Warren, and that is going to hurt his snap share. I don't think they're going to get a bunch of red zone, just fall in the end zone. I don't think that's how that offense is going to play. A-Rod playing his last year, you think he's going to give up a passing touchdown just to gift a Rico Dowdle touchdown? No, dude. He's going to run a play action on something, throw it to some tight end too or whatever, give Darnell Washington something right after getting the bag. So I think Rico Dowdle is going to be the most stereotypical, like, early down plotter that gets no valuable touches in an offense that's going to be in the bottom half of the league. So, if there is a running back to own, it's Warren. I don't really want to own either, but I'm super off of Rico Dowdle. Promise you I'll have 0% shares.
Yep. I think I'm with you on that. I think there are players, of course, that we really like that we will talk about, maybe not on the league winners show, but they might make the league winners kind of honorable mention segment. Not a guy that's a league winner, but Kyle Monangai. I mean, he's a guy that you talk about, okay, if the starter were to miss time, who is someone that could replicate most of or potentially outproduce what that player was giving you? I think Kyle Monangai is that player this year. Yeah. He's a more contingent upside. He's a more expensive Tyler Algier. That's what it is. So that's going to do it for this version of the 2026 Do Not Draft List running back edition. Make sure you check out our quarterback video that we have already done for the 2026 Do Not Draft List. Kendall and I are going to go and record the wide receivers. So that will be coming out shortly. And then we'll talk about tight ends somewhere, somehow. We've got to give the people what they want, Kendall, even though it's pretty easy to draft the top 4 and log out. But we will do some stuff for the tight ends as well. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Extra Point. Check out that quarterback video. We will record the wide receiver video. See y'all soon. We out.